Hi guys, my name's Subculture, I'm the man on the Silver Mountain, and welcome back. Now today, I kind of want to lead off from something I was talking about at the beginning of the week, which is in my video where I was talking about knowing what you want and maybe not being able to communicate that, and the awkwardness and the problems that kind of spring up around that. In one of the messages that I received, it was brought up that there were elements of kind of what I was saying and the things that even arguably what other people were saying in their other messages, even though they weren't coordinated seemingly. That this is the problem, and it's the people that don't grow off out of this kind of area that become incels. And for those of you that don't know what incels are, there are technically two terms. One that is the description of an online subculture, and one of which is just a situational description. Now, the situational description is involuntary celibates, whereby it's just someone that may very well want a relationship but has trouble finding them. And these are the kind of individuals that I talked about in my video at the beginning of the week, so I won't go much more into that. If you haven't seen that video, feel free to jump back to that video. I'll leave a link in the description. But otherwise, we're talking about this online subculture, which has described themselves as incels, the kind of condensation or portmanteau of involuntary celibates, and they have an awful lot of forums online. They've got kind of areas on Reddit. They've got their own forums elsewhere, and where you can, in terms of like the general populace of people who struggle to find a relationship, who are involuntarily celibate, that tends to be a male and female issue, a male and female thing. But when it comes to these groups, this online subculture, it's seeming to be an awful lot more in the way of kind of young men who are heterosexual, and there's an awful lot of resentment and kind of misanthropic stuff, a lot of self-pity, self-loathing, and all that kind of thing. And these are areas that we've discussed before, as in the video that I did at the beginning of the week, and in the past we've talked about this, where you've got the scale of a person, and you've got the neurotic end, where you've got the stereotypical kind of nice guy, and you've got the more psychotic end, where you've got arseholes and psychos. And before recording this video, I went and took a look at some of the incel pages on Reddit, and on doing a quick Google search to find some of their other forums, just to take a look, scroll down through the forums, take a look at a few threads, and just to kind of fill out my idea of what this subculture is. Because like, I've dealt with people who technically speaking are involuntary celibates, and who fall into the nice guy or the psycho end of that scale of a person that I've shown to you guys before. And it's like those people can be tough to deal with, but it can be both guys and girls. And more often than not, a lot of the people that you find towards the neurotic end tend to be latent. They're very self-doubting, they're very reserved, but they're not actively out to kind of lash back or to strike out at themselves even. They're just there, and they're kind of plodding along, and they're not happy, but they're not kind of stuck in a place where they will just turn and lash out at things. And in looking through these forums and things, these sites, it's a sad, really sad story in a lot of these instances, because there are a lot of guys here who are going, who seem to be more on the latent point of the scale, where they're going, I don't have anything to offer a woman, or kind of, how do I make myself more attractive with hair implants? How do I make my dick bigger? How do I do all of these things to make myself more attractive? The kind of verges of what do they have that I don't, but instead of going, it's wrong that they get attention and I don't. They go, how can I make myself more like them? And a lot of the time they're missing the point, because they're digging into the, oh well, what can I see, what can I examine, what can I pick apart, how can I replicate that, instead of going, well, how is it that those people act, what is it they do, what do their thought processes follow, because in many instances that's what matters over anything else. But then you've also got the darker end of things, where you've got people throwing out fake science, talking about how it's genetic weakness and how they may as well just wipe themselves out. How it's something that needs to be remedied in them, all the way down to how women's rights need to be removed, because that's what started this whole mess. And there's an awful lot of toxicity here, and like nastiness, which doesn't need to be. But there are a few points that I do want to hit on. Firstly, yeah, there have to be weak points in populations. You know, the trial and error of evolution has demonstrated that. You know, where you've got, say, two groups of birds that have been separated by a mountain range. Originally they were the same species, and then they diverge because in one area on one side of the mountains there is a type of individual in that population that has certain traits that then as a result makes them better breeding stock, better, more survivable. And so those other areas of that population collapse and die, because they die out, and they no longer appear at all in the children and the future generations of those birds. But on the other side of the mountains, where the environment could be completely different, the type of birds that died out on the other side could be the dominant species, or the dominant subset over here with the right traits for that specific environment, and so they become the prevalent kind of subspecies over there instead. So yeah, there is something that has to be said for populations have to have their weak links. Because if they don't have their weak links, you know, then that means that everything's the same everywhere, and it's just not. If you standardize the human being, then we would die out very quickly. Standardize any creature, they die out very quickly. You know, there has to be adaptation. There has to be the kind of range of people that you can interact with and move between, and in terms of considering we're talking about kind of romantic and sexual relationships here, there has to be for on a macro scale, for kind of healthy populations, there has to be those variations, and where some people are going to win out over others. You know, that's an unfortunate truth, and it may not be the most popular truth, especially amongst these kinds of individuals, but that's the way it is. Now, does it have to be the case in our modern society? No, not really. But to move from a situation where you are in these places where you are hating the world around you, where you are being negative, where you are preventing yourself from growing, or you are just self-pitying yourself, or the way that you look to grow doesn't mean a damn thing, then you're only ever in your own way. The way to step around this is to change your thinking, reframe the problems. You know, I've said in other videos, the places to go and find partners, firstly, wouldn't be your mother's basement, but also wouldn't be necessarily a nightclub. Go do a thing that you enjoy. Go book shopping. If you see someone that's browsing the same section as you that you quite like the look of, maybe ask them what they're reading. Ask them what they're interested in. Make a suggestion based on the book that they have in their hand. Oh, if you're thinking of reading that, you might want to read this. Strike up conversations. Be friendly. Don't go just looking for sex. Don't go just looking for a relationship. Look for enrichment of your life and the lives of those around you. you are more likely to find good things in doing that. But also, you can't just blame the world for everything. There are times where you can literally say, yes, the world, the previous generations, the way that things have changed, they have disadvantaged me and people like me. In this situation where you're going, where there are entire threads going, in the old days, we would all have wives. Bet you anything you fucking wouldn't. Because there would be probably a larger percentage of you that would. But I bet you anything there's a vast majority of you that still wouldn't. And yet, you'd probably still be as upset, depressed, outraged, self-loathing rather. But you wouldn't have a forum for it. You wouldn't be able to reach out to other people like you. You wouldn't be able to convert the people who are just there with low self-esteem and feeling miserable about their situation to being as hate-filled and negative as you by engaging with them and dragging them along with you to whatever ideology you want to pitch. You know, there's an awful lot here that that just doesn't stand up to scrutiny. And this is where I was saying at the end of the last video, you know, you might have difficulty telling people what you want, communicating with others, dealing with all of these interactions that can be really difficult. But don't let yourself slip into hating yourself, hating other people, expecting more, or feeling entitled to more, because that is one of the best ways to drive other people away from you. And I've been thinking about discussing this topic of incels, this subculture that just doesn't seem to get it, because they have slipped too far to either end of the kind of scale of a person that we've covered before. And I've been thinking about covering this for a while, and I never really worked out how to do it. But then after the messages that I received in response to that video that I did that was up whilst I was away, I felt like it was the kind of best time to relate it to something else I talked about. So I'd love to hear your thoughts, guys, especially if you're in one of these subcultural groups, I suppose, on these forums and things. If you're feeling that you can't find someone or anything like that, there may very well be reasons for it, and they aren't necessarily all to do with the rest of the world. And that might be hard to hear. It might be hard to do something about, but there's a good chance that that's the case. But it's like, I'd love to hear your experiences, your thoughts. Why is it that you found yourself in this place, in this way? Otherwise, guys, in regards to your interactions with the subculture, as I said, there's a lot of nastiness here. There's a lot of stuff that isn't particularly nice. But also in regards to just your general opinions. Because also, seeing some of this stuff covered in the press over the last, 6 months or so, it makes me just kind of raise my eyebrows. Because it's like, they're throwing everyone again into this same space, into this pot, and kind of beating them with a stick until they're all just this mass, so that the bad and the good are all mixed together, and there's no differentiating between just miserable people and people who are actively out with some kind of very negative agenda. But it seems to me the same kind of way that we see gamers all being portrayed, or men's rights activists all being portrayed, when there are good and bad in everything. So, I'd love to hear your thoughts on the way that these groups are perceived as well. As much as there is an awful lot of nastiness here, there are also an awful lot of people here just seemingly not knowing where else to go to call for help. So, there's a couple of different things that are going to have to be done to deal with groups like this, where and the negative impacts that they can have. And part of that, I think, is what I was saying on Monday in regards to education around relationships. But anyway, guys, as said, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Otherwise, thank you very much for watching, and I will see you in the video later. Take care. Thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, then please drop us a like, share this video, and subscribe for more, and I will see you in the video later. Take care.